ThinkPad. Here is a ThinkPad. This is the ThinkPad P14s AMD model. This model came out actually not too long ago. I wouldn't call it like a brand new laptop, but it's still pretty new, to be honest. I got this one here on a really good price on Lenovo website, directly from Lenovo Canada. I bought it. I think it was like 13 or 1400 Canadian dollars. This thing is decked out. They've been having a lot of really good sales on these models here. I don't know if it's because the new chips are coming, the new AMD Ryzen AI and the new Lunar Lake stuff from Intel. So maybe they're just like, you know what, let's put these last gen chips on sale. But these things are still incredibly good, even in 2024, 2025, and honestly, probably a couple more years after that. This one here is fantastic. The P14s is meant to be basically the same as the T14s, realistically. A slimmer ThinkPad, but it's a traditional ThinkPad, higher end, so realistically, you're gonna get all the bells and whistles with it. You can customize them. This one here was not, but there's a lot of different specifications you can go through. After this intro, we'll do that together. This one here, I did get with the OLED screen, you know, all the decked out bells and whistles. Realistically, this is the type of laptop you're gonna be looking for if you're a content creator, realistically, and you don't necessarily need accelerated NVIDIA graphics or AMD accelerated graphics dedicated, anything like that. You're just okay with having that really powerful iGPU and really powerful and efficient CPU. This one's also good for just anyone, realistically, because it's going to have really good battery life, really quite good battery life, excellent screen, good speakers, everything, and it's all packaged into one great product. So let's jump into the different model specifications you can get on this laptop, and I'll go over what this model that I'm going to be reviewing has on it.
So here we're looking at the Canadian website. You can see there's a lot of different kind of pre-made ones here. Of course, there's the builders. I got the one way down here. You can see this model here. This is what I ended up with, which is on sale. With some coupons, I think it cost me about $1,400, which is very impressive, to be honest. Ryzen Pro 7 8840HS, very good AMD processor. 780M iGPU, fantastic. 64 gigabytes of RAM, 2 SODIMM sticks, that's obviously fantastic. 1 terabyte NVMe, it's fine, you can upgrade it. This does have the better screen option here. OLED, 1800p, 100% DCI-P, 120 hertz, very good. The larger battery, I think there's potentially a smaller battery, but this one has a larger battery as well. So that's really quite good there, realistically, especially for the price. I mean, yeah, it's pretty killer actually. But there's also a builder in here, and we can have a look at the different options here. So there's the Ryzen 7 8840HS, which I have. There's the 8640HS Ryzen 5, both good CPUs, 8-core, 6-core, 780M graphics, 760M graphics. I mean, if you can afford it, definitely go for the better one. It's not the end of the world, though. They're both quite good. RAM, this is SODIMM, so you can upgrade it yourself, make the choice that works best for you. 8 gigabytes is not even close to enough, but again, you could get 8 gigabytes and just buy RAM and add it yourself. But I did come with 64 gigabytes on mine, which is really nice. Looks like they will actually equip it all the way up to 96. Mine came with 1 terabyte. Again, you can upgrade it yourself, not a big deal. There are some different screens here. These two screens here are quite bad. 1200p 45% NTSC, 1200p 45 NTSC. Don't even buy these, just ignore those. If you're going to buy this laptop with those screens, just buy something else, like an L14 or something, and get a better screen. This one here is actually a good screen though, WUXGA, so 1200p as well, but it's 100% sRGB, massive improvement over this garbage here. So this would be a huge upgrade. 400 nits is pretty right. It's only 60 hertz, but I mean, it's fine. With some coupons on that, you're probably looking at maybe 40, 50 bucks Canadian. These are all Canadian dollars, by the way, not American. Realistically, you're just going for the touch there, but yeah, it looks like you can't get the OLED unless you actually go with the pre-cooked one, and then you get that really nice OLED there. Getting that OLED, you're not really paying much more, especially when you add some coupons on that. So that's the model there.
Okay, so getting into the laptop's very easy. You just take out the screws. They have washers on them, so they don't actually just kind of fall out, as you can see that there. Now on the front here, there are some hinge pieces. You can see that there. They actually have a little bit of a hinge. So you don't want to lift from the front because you'll break them. You want to lift from the back like that and pop it off. And then we have our bottom here, just a plastic bottom, but well structured, thicker plastic. So feels nice. Okay, so let's have a look inside the laptops here. There actually is a fair bit of difference between the two of them. Some of the things are going to be like what you customize, but there is quite a bit of a difference here. So this is the 2024 model. This is the 2023 model. So often you can customize the batteries a little bit on these here, 52 watt hours in both cases. I think you can get a smaller one. So they're basically the same battery. They look a little different, but they're the same. 1 NVMe on both of them, both in relatively the same spot with heat sinks on them. Very nice. WAN slot for cellular on both cases here. Basically the same. Speakers are different. Here they're up-firing speakers here. On the last year's model, they're up-firing speakers here. Let's have a look at the differences here. Okay, so this year's model, it's a very different shape. Try to not destroy that. Okay, it's the higher wattage variant that they've been putting on 2024 ThinkPads and end of 2023 models. Very nice. Yeah, similar but smaller. See that there? I'm not sure if it'll show up well on camera, but they are similar styles. These are decent speakers overall, to be honest. They're still the higher watt variant rather than those weird circle ones they used to put on, but they're smaller. This is probably, I don't know, 30% more surface area. So normally I'd probably guess this will have, soon we get to the audio section, but I'm assuming it's probably have a little bit more volume and potentially a little bit more bass overall, just because it's a slightly higher wattage speaker. Okay, other things of note. Now we'll get into the more obvious stuff. Now they went to the minutia a bit. Different cooling systems. You can actually see there's a much bigger fan last year, which is interesting. So last year was the 7000 series. This is the 8000 series. Technically the same chip, realistically. So it's a much bigger fan in terms of diameter on last year's, which is interesting. Yeah, that maybe it's different underneath. Like maybe that fan doesn't come all the way out there, but the overall like fan area seems to be a little bit bigger, I think, overall. However, 2 heat pipes here, so 1 and 2 right there. 1 heat pipe on this year's model, but this is a very thin heat pipe. You can see that there. 2 heat pipes, a little bit thinner. If we can zoom in there, right? A little bit thinner heat pipe on that there, but 2 of them. This year here has a thicker heat pipe, slightly thicker, and obviously larger surface area, but there's 1 of them. I don't know. We'll have to see which one runs cooler. Technically, they're the same chip, so I'm not really sure. There's a little tweak between them, but they're based on the same chip, just a little bit of a tweak here and there. So that's interesting. The other thing is this one here is soldered memory. So you can see here the memory is not visible. This one here runs at, this one here, however, is 64 gigabytes. So it's got a ton of memory in it. It should, in theory, run faster too, because soldered memory runs faster. This one here is not soldered memory. So we'll open this up here, and there's actually SODIMM underneath there. So we actually get memory, like physical DIMMs memory there. Very nice. So this is upgradable. If you get this one, for example, with, 64 gigabytes, or, if you get this one here with, say, like 8 gigabytes or 16, down the road, you can upgrade it. So it's not that big of a deal. It will run slower because they're DIMMs. They're going to run at 5600 mega transfers max. This one here, you get what you get, but it runs faster. I would highly recommend if you pick up one of these, for example, used from someone, 32 gigabytes, or 64 is where you want to get into, because then it's going to be long term. This is 64. So 64 and 64, faster, slower, not upgradable, yes, upgradable. I mean, it's 64 in both cases, so it's not the end of the world either way, but that's just something to be aware of there, that you're going to end up having, upgradable memory on that one there. So otherwise, they're basically the same. I mean, there's definitely some pretty interesting tweaks here and there, just little things here and there, right? Like positioning of the speakers rather than being back there, they're more a little bit more stereo, so they'll be a little bit more stereo separation. They're slightly better. NVMe the same. That's going to be the same. Interesting that they went from soldered to unsoldered. That's not common. Normally they go the other way around. And then the heat pipe setup is a little bit different, but we'll have to actually test it to see how they sound when we get into it. And one other thing of note, this one here, you can see shallower heat pipe, but it blows right out of it. So actually less like heat pipe mass realistically, but you're just short travel there and you're blasting out of the back of the laptop. And it's not blasting into the screen, like into the screen when it's up. It's actually blasting kind of down. You'll see here with the actual back piece here, most of it's actually coming slightly down. So it's not hitting into the screen. So it's going to be exhausting out that way. This one here, you have more travel for the heat pipe to go, but it goes out the side, potentially where your hand is maybe, if that matters to you. It's a little bit interesting because this one has a skin on it that the person I got it off of applied, but you can see here, this is the actual normal color. So otherwise, we can use our brains and our imagination. So right off the bat, they're going to be very similar in terms of design. Again, this has that little skin on it. Again, this has this little design skin on it, but you can kind of ignore that. So this is last year's model, this year's model. On last year's model, RJ45 on the left side, RJ45 on the right side, so you still have it, it's just different. This is that kind of always open one. This year they have the kind of closed one. One Thunderbolt port or USB 4 port, one, I guess, normal USB 3 10 gigabit, 2 USB 4 ports on this one, so that's a straight upgrade. You get 2 USB 4 instead of 1, huge upgrade. HDMI is going to be the same. You have always on battery there and headphone jack. So realistically, The sides are very similar. The difference is the RJ is over here, and these ports are changed slightly. Right side of the laptop, you can actually see the exhaust there. We'll talk about that in a sec. Smart card reader spots, same. You have your WAN slot there. This one here, the WAN slot is on the bottom last year, so it's just moved. Then you have your second, then you have another USB-A, same thing, and then just the RJ45. So the ports are the same number of ports. The primary difference is they moved around a little bit, and this year you get an extra USB 4. That's the primary difference there. Potentially for more cooling, not sure. You can see the screen looks a little bit taller on last year's model. It's not exactly taller. This one here has this cutout bezel with the camera bump. This one here does not have that. It's just flush across. The actual screens are very similar. This one's ever so slightly higher, which is interesting. So this is a taller laptop, but the screen is actually, more or less the same realistically. That's different. Inside of the chassis here, this is a gray type texture. Actually less common in ThinkPads. I actually like this. I like this gray. I think Lenovo should bring this back. Some of the T14s and P14s with this gray I've always found nice because they're not so bad for fingerprints. Yeah, it's not a traditional. ThinkPads have to be black, but traditional ThinkPad black is really bad for fingerprints, like actually really bad. Some people don't care. Some people don't care about fingerprints. I do. I'm the type of person who gets bothered if I, actually legitimately bothered if I fingerprint. So this type texture is going to be much more fingerprint resistant. The keyboard still gets them, but it's not as bad when your whole chassis, like if your whole chassis isn't covered in fingerprints and just your keyboard, usually you can deal with it. This thing will end up with fingerprints all over the place. The lid will end up with fingerprints. So it drives me kind of ballistic, to be honest. I think Lenovo should go back to this gray or just always offer it as an option, right? You can just buy this gray because it doesn't matter. Like I don't care. ThinkPads don't have to be black. Yeah, no, I'm a traditionalist. I have several old IBM ThinkPads even, and they're black, but those were much more resistant to fingerprints than whatever this material is. The older ThinkPad texture, they just didn't get fingerprints the same. So they went with the same ThinkPad black, but they're bad for fingerprints. Keyboards are basically the same. However, last year you had the function and controls switched there, which bothered some people. This year they're switched back to more traditional, which bothers some people. So it all depends how much of a purist are. Doesn't matter in Lenovo Vantage or in the BIOS, you can swap them back. So you can swap them how you want. Copilot button, print screen button. Obviously I don't want a Copilot button, so that's a downgrade, but I'll live realistically. F9 looks like it's print screen. I don't know what that is. Oh, it's the little side thing, just because things are moved around. Otherwise, they're basically the same. Speakers are up here at the back. Two of them, you get a little bit of stereo separation. Here you get full stereo separation because they're on the right and left. Spoiler for the speaker section, I do find this year's speakers better. I find all ThinkPads have had upgrades this year for the speakers. Screens, we can get into them here and do a little bit of a comparison. This one here I actually have overclocked. It's not actually overclocked. There's just a program you can download and you can just unlock other forms of screen resolutions, right? So when we come in here, this is 1800p, same resolution. Both of them 100% DCI-P screens with very similar type specifications. We can come in here and go to advanced though. This is a native 120 hertz refresh rate screen. This one is a native, it is actually a native 90 hertz refresh rate screen, but for some reason Lenovo locks it to 60. So when you buy this laptop or you look up the specs, it's going to show as 60. Okay, so just be aware of that. You're going to be stuck with 60 versus 120, but you can just come in here. There's the software here. There's lots of forums online. CRU. You can come in here. You can run CRU, and you can basically just set up a custom profile. It takes 5 seconds, and then you just restart your computer, right? So now I have a 90 hertz refresh rate there. So that's a lot of the external stuff, realistically. There's not much else going on in terms of the externals. Realistically, there are quite a few tweaks even on the externals, right? Like so far we've seen quite a bit of tweaks here and there for these two laptops. You can see, we'll give it a quick type while we have the keyboard up. Yeah, so it's a ThinkPad keyboard, pretty much as good as it's going to get for a fairly low profile. You can see the actual keycaps are fairly low profile, right? Lots of travel though, and very snappy. Trackpad is not gigantic, right? Just a standard size trackpad with good click this year though. I prefer a snappier click, But ThinkPads, I don't know, they're a little bit muted. I think they do that because, you know, they're used in workplace environments, so they don't want like chuk, 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 chuk constantly. Then you do have your dedicated left and right and scroll button because you do have a track point nib. So when you're typing, you can come in here and use your track point nib and navigate with that, right? Use your scrolling too. So good for touch typists. So that's good. This will be automatically on your laptop when you get it, X right, and you can come in here, and these are very calibrated screens, right? They're factory calibrated from Lenovo. Let's get that out of there. So you can actually swap through. So default, you can come in here and go to sRGB if you're working in sRGB color space and you want to see what it looks like on an sRGB screen. It's very obvious this is an sRGB screen because the reds drop down. And if you want, I mean, I'd say sRGB screens are more common on the market for most people. So if you want to be like, you know, you're doing graphic design or video editing or something, you think, what is it going to look like if someone is looking at this on an sRGB screen? You can flip it into that mode. You can go into P3, which is my preferred color space. You know, you get vibrant reds, very, very nice. Adobe RGB, if you're doing print media, for example, or photography, right? Go into Adobe RGB, or you can just leave it in that or not calibrated. So easy to flip through these is very important. The fact that you can do that, because this is obviously a workstation PC, but when you're getting into this level of screen, you're getting into professional creator level screen, realistically, like actually, legitimately. So that's very good there. Lenovo Vantage, do your BIOS updates on that here. There already was one. There might be another one. You can get updates obviously from Windows Update. That's primarily for Windows software. When you're getting into doing actual, you know, hardware level updates, you do want to use Lenovo Vantage because it will get you things like BIOS updates. After that, so normally what I do is I do Lenovo Vantage, get my BIOS updates, then I go in and install my AMD drivers, for example. You can get them from here, but I like to do them directly. Then after that, I get my Windows drivers. So that's going to be really good there. So the screen itself is obviously fantastic. It's an OLED. Let's see if I can get down that reflectivity. It's a less reflective OLED. They do have a, you know, less reflective coating on it. So you're going to get, so you're not going to get crazy reflections. A lot of OLED screens are going to be like a touchscreen gloss. And so you're going to end up with really crazy reflections. This is not a touchscreen. Lenovo does make touchscreen versions of this as well, which are, you know, this kind of non-gloss. It does cut down on a little bit of the blacks, just ever so slightly, because you do get a little bit of diffusing light, but it's still like very dark OLED blacks. When you get into an OLED that is then glossy, it might look a little bit better just realistically, but that's just going to come down to preference. I think ThinkPads in general are going to be used in outdoor environments, work environments. So going with the non-gloss is probably a pretty good decision realistically, because otherwise you're going to risk a lot of glare. Red's fantastic here, as you can see. You know, we're in the P3 color space. Incredibly vibrant screen. Like shockingly vibrant. I'm using different laptops, and when I come to this one, it's shockingly good. OLED blacks, right? Realistically, looks great. If you get into a glossy one, it might look a little more rich, but this is a fantastic screen. Right? Beautiful colors here on the screen. Truly like a gift of a screen, realistically. This is probably, for a workstation, the best screen that I've ever used, realistically. 120 hertz refresh rate, all those different color profiles, P3 color space if need be. You can go into the sRGB if need be. Very vibrant, nice and bright too for an OLED. 400 nits on an OLED's really good. It's just the type of screen, it really does just suck you in. It's a gorgeous screen. We'll do the audio test now. So if you do have headphones, you're going to want to not potentially have them turned up. We'll go into this though. These do have those upgraded speakers over here, so you get more stereo separation. And then I'm assuming the volume is going to be significantly better. So the speakers themselves are a huge upgrade for ThinkPads. Last year, and especially the years before that, ThinkPad speakers generally sucked. There was a few models that had okay speakers, but generally speaking, they were like bad. They worked, and that was about it. Often they were tinny and just didn't sound good. These sound good. They're nice and rich. There's actually a decent amount of low-end bass in them too. They're not going to beat out like a Lenovo Yoga 9i or something like that, which has way more bass, just way more volume. Now, I am curious. I don't think this comes with Realtek. Oh, it does actually. So what I'm curious here is if we tweak the sound here. They're not very loud. So what we're going to do is come in here to this FX Sound. This is just a freeware software. There's a few things you could do. You could go like, for example, just tweak these, go volume boost. So just turn it up, for example. bass boost, for example. What I'm going to do is probably leave it in general. I might, and then just increase the volume. So we're just going to move everything up. And we'll just see how it sounds. Keep it exactly how it was, like in terms of the actual curve. Go like that there. And then we'll go back here and just listen to it now. Way louder. Right, so these are good speakers, right? They're good speakers. If you get these out of the box and you're like, they're a little quiet or whatever, no, just tweak them. Just get FX sound and just give them a little tweak. Even just pull the whole, curve up, audio curve up here. They get much louder than I guess Lenovo tunes them to, and that's probably because workspace environment. Okay, we'll look at some benchmarks here. We're just running some Cinebench here. Let's check the temperatures. Now on these laptops, the power profile, if you actually go into battery here, is actually tied into the chip itself, right? So we can see this here when we open this up. Very respectable noise level under max load. I mean like 45, 40. Very respectable for, max load or whatever. And it's not a noisy, irritating sound. It's actually going away, which is nice. Chip here, these things sit at about 30, 35 watts or so. Yeah, there we go, 35 watts here. They're rated for about 30, but I guess, because it's a laptop platform, it's okay dumping more consistently. So 30, it'll actually boost momentarily. So if you actually just hit Cinebench, you just run it, it'll boost up to probably about 45 to 50 for 5 to 10 seconds, giving you that burst kind of workload. So if you're doing something demanding, that's short burst, opening up something demanding program or something like that, it'll just give you that boom, immediate rush of power. Then it will drop down to about 35 here. And the scores, we'll have to check when we're closing. Yeah, it's about 13, 14K. It's about normal. Actually, a little higher than the last year's one for sure. The best power efficiency. Yeah, see, now it's dropping down. 24. Check the noise. 45. So it's not super quiet, but it's by no means noisy. It's also kind of a nice fan noise, I guess I'd say. It doesn't irritate me. Temperatures are pretty good realistically, right? Looks like there was a tiny moment of throttling there. We can go back up. Just realistically, until the fans kick up is normally what happens. And then, it'll go back into performance mode here. It'll probably go up around, yeah, there you go. And again, this is full load here. So for a tiny little chip, it's pretty good. Just have a quick look at some benchmarks here. You can see that the Cinebench score is 14,121, which is actually very high for an 8840HS. Last year's model, the 7740U, which is basically the same CPU, just a little tweaked. I was getting about 12,000 on the same laptop, so it's actually a pretty big jump, 12,000 up to 14,000, all else being the same. And actually last year's model had faster RAM, realistically, because it's soldered, so it actually runs faster. So I guess the AMD tweaking to this chip makes it a little better, but overall, very, very good performance there. When you drop down to silent mode, you do lose a decent amount. You go down to 10,000, but that's still pretty fast considering how low the watts are. So, I mean, that's still going to beat out a lot of very capable chips, realistically. Wi-Fi was very fast. You can see here, it's as fast as my Wi-Fi can possibly go. Very good. Battery life is very good on this laptop. Here's me at 100% brightness, 120 hertz refresh rate, everything just doing whatever. And I'm just kind of hanging out in Windows here, and you can see that it's burning around 7 or 8 watts or so. It's not going to be able to stack up to the brand new Lunar Lake that I just tested a couple days ago, but still quite good. Overall, we're probably going to get, if this thing was full, we're only at 60%, you're probably going to get about 6 to 8 hours on idle at 120 hertz. You could, of course, turn down the brightness. You could, of course, lower the refresh rate to get a little bit more battery life. Then I did some 1080p 60 YouTube. Same thing, everything kind of maxed out. And you can see that didn't really increase the wattage burning. We're burning probably around 9 to 10. Not crazy or anything there. So it's, again, 60% battery life here, and you're probably going to get about 6 to 7 hours of YouTube. So not bad considering it's a relatively small battery, 57 watt hours. If you are looking for a really good battery life, though, you may want to consider some of those new Lunar Lake laptops that Lenovo is coming out with. So what do I think about the P14s here, this specific one, and just in general? They're truly outstanding laptops. Sometimes, we're right on the cusp of new chips coming out. The new Ryzen AI is basically just about to leave the Asus exclusivity period, and I've already used them. And the Lunar Lake stuff is coming out realistically. So we're on the cusp of new chips coming out. Does that make this one, invalid? Not at all. not at all. Because the new stuff's going to be more expensive by like a lot. It's going to be a lot more expensive. There are uplifts in terms of performance, CPU, iGPU performance, efficiency, all these things. But, getting into a laptop with this level of specifications with the new chips is going to cost you like double. This thing here was about 1,400 Canadian dollars. That's like maybe 1050 American, somewhere around there. Yeah, it's decked out. Like, it's actually decked out. It's got 1 terabyte storage, but you can upgrade it. So, I mean, I got into this laptop for an incredibly good price. This thing is the type laptop that's going to be good for years. It's going to be good for different types of people too. Content creators, obviously with that gorgeous screen. Professionals, you can step down from the OLED and still get a nice sRGB screen if that's something you're interested in. Sure, the new stuff is going to be a little bit more powerful in terms of iGPU and like a fair bit more powerful for CPU. But I mean, you're going to be paying twice the cost. So this is something you should consider. It's still a relatively new SKU from Lenovo. And, they're putting these things out for a really competitive price because they know, some people are going to want to get into the brand new stuff. Some people are looking to pick up last gen stuff on a really good sale. And this thing has outstanding value. So if you're looking for a laptop like this with truly like a 10 out of 10 S plus tier screen, good speakers, incredible keyboard, awesome battery life, a very, very good CPU, realistically the best from last generation, which is just like on the cusp of expiring in terms of generations. Upgradable RAM, realistically, I mean, it came with 64, but you can get different models, spec it out as you want. This is probably the one to get realistically, if you can get it on a good sale.